The old house stood at the end of the street like a decaying monarch surveying its crumbling kingdom. Ivy clung to its sides like skeletal fingers, and the windows were vacant eyes staring blindly ahead. It had been empty for years since the last family packed up and left without a backward glance. Except us, because we're not like those people. We're adventurers seeking fortune and glory, or at least my brother Ben was. He convinced me to come with him to explore the derelict mansion. At least we agreed on that much last week. Today was the day we finally got the key from Mrs. Forsyte, the nosy neighbor who'd been watching the house for the absent owners. She gave us the key with the same warning she'd given us the last 3 times we'd asked for it. "Beware," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "Whatever you do, don't go into the basement." Then she scurried away before either of us could reply. Of course, we ignored her warning. What did she know? Probably just trying to be dramatic to make the story of the haunted house more exciting. It wasn't like this was some horror movie where the characters would be punished for their curiosity. But then again, movies are fiction. Reality is rarely so kind. We unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through grimy windows. Furniture was shrouded in white sheets like ghosts. A grand staircase swept upwards, disappearing into the gloom above. Cobwebs brushed against our faces and the air hung heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something faintly metallic. Ben pulled out his flashlight and marched towards the stairs. "Come on, slowpoke," he called back to me. "Let's see what's in here before those bats find us." I hurried after him, my heart pounding in my chest. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind through the broken window panes sounded like footsteps, like voices. My imagination was running wild, conjuring horrors around every corner. At the top of the stairs, we found ourselves in a long, narrow hallway. Ben shone his flashlight down the length of the room, revealing faded floral wallpaper and tarnished gilt mirrors hanging askew on the walls. The air grew colder as we walked, goosebumps erupting on my arms. Then we saw it, or rather, smelled it. A sickly, sweet odor, like rotting flesh, permeated the room. Ben and I exchanged uneasy glances. Was this the source of the metallic scent? And what was that smell? The questions hung in the air as we approached the end of the hall. There, partially hidden behind a tattered tapestry, was a door. It was slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of darkness within. The stench was strongest here. Curiosity and dread warred within me. What lay behind that door? Should we enter? Ben didn't hesitate. He pushed the door open wider, flooding the room with an unnatural green glow. I gasped, shielding my eyes from the sudden brightness. When I dared to look again, I saw that the room beyond was unlike any I'd ever seen. It was circular, the walls curving inwards until they met a low, domed ceiling. In the center of the room sat a large stone altar. Its surface was stained and pitted, bearing testament to countless rituals performed here in the past. But it was the glow emanating from the walls that truly captivated my attention. Intricate symbols, like eyes peering blindly into the abyss, glowed with an eerie green light. They were surrounded by smaller markings, patterns so intricate they seemed to writhe and twist before my very eyes. It was as if the room itself was alive, breathing, watching us with a million silent eyes. And then there were the bones. Scattered across the floor and piled precariously on the altar were fragments of skeletons. Some were small, like the bones of a child, others larger, more robust. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Were these human remains? If so, what had happened to the people who lived here all those years ago? I turned to Ben, but his face was ashen, his eyes wide with terror. He was staring at something behind me. I whirled around, my heart pounding. There, emerging from the shadows, was a tall, gaunt figure. It moved with an unnerving grace, its limbs impossibly long and thin, its back hunched as if in perpetual sorrow. Its head was bowed, obscuring its face from view. I wanted to scream, to run, but terror had frozen me in place. The figure glided closer, its presence filling me with a nameless dread. Then it raised its head. I gasped. Its face was a mask of bone, its eyes glowing embers in the darkness. It opened its mouth, revealing rows upon rows of sharp, pointed teeth. I stumbled back, knocking over a pile of bones. They clattered to the floor, momentarily distracting the creature. I didn't hesitate. I ran, stumbling blindly for the door. I could hear Ben behind me, his panicked footsteps echoing my own. The creature let out a blood-curdling screech, and I knew it was coming for us. We burst through the door and into the hallway. I could feel its burning gaze upon us, could hear its rasping breaths growing louder with each passing moment. We raced down the stairs, the floorboards groaning beneath our feet. As we tumbled into the foyer, the front door burst open as if inviting us out. We didn't need any further encouragement. We didn't stop running until we were far away from the house, until our lungs had almost burst and our legs could carry us no further. Panting, we collapsed on the grass, the safety of the house looming behind us. We had escaped, but at what cost? Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that horrifying creature began to fade. Yet sometimes, when the wind blows through the trees in just the right way, I swear I can hear its mournful cries echoing through the night. And in my nightmares, I still run, always running from the creature with the glowing eyes, forever seeking the safety of the house that isn't there. One evening, several weeks after our harrowing escape, I was sitting alone in my room when I heard a knock on the window. I looked up to see a gaunt face framed by unkempt hair. His eyes, I could see clearly now, glowed an eerie green in the twilight. Before I could scream, he was gone. I rushed to the front door and flung it open, but there was no one there. I searched the street, half expecting to see the creature from the house standing before me, waiting to drag me back to its lair. But the street was empty, deserted. Then I noticed something lying on the welcome mat. It was a key. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the worn grooves. It looked strangely familiar. Where had I seen it before? Then I remembered. It was the key to the house. But how? How could it be here? Mrs. Forsythe had the only copy. A chill wind swept down the street, carrying with it the scent of decaying leaves and something else, something sickly sweet and metallic. My blood ran cold. Was that the smell of death? Had the creature come for me? Was it trying to lure me back to the house? Driven by a morbid curiosity and a desperate hope of finding answers, I took the key and walked back to the house. The windows were dark, lifeless eyes staring blankly ahead. The door was locked, or rather, it was locked from the inside. A sudden wave of panic surged through me. What if the creature was still inside? What if it was waiting for me? I tried the handle, but it was locked. I rattled it violently, shouting for help, but my voice echoed unanswered in the vast emptiness. I ran around the house, searching for another way in, but every window was boarded up, every other entrance sealed. Trapped. I slid down the wall, despair washing over me. Then I saw it. A loose brick nestled in the ivy at the base of the wall. With trembling hands, I pulled it free, revealing a dark opening. An opening that beckoned me closer. With a deep breath, I squeezed through the opening and found myself in a narrow passage. It was barely big enough for me to fit, the air thick with the scent of decay and that unmistakable metallic tang. I pressed on, driven by a force I couldn't resist. The tunnel opened into a cavernous space, the floor littered with bones. I recognized them instantly. They were the same bones I'd seen in the room with the glowing eyes. I realized with a jolt that I was standing in the very center of the house, beneath the ritual room. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow and heavy, scraping against the stone floor. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. The footsteps stopped directly behind me. I slowly turned around, my eyes straining to pierce the darkness. And there it was, the creature. Its eyes burned like green embers in the gloom. Its mouth hung open, revealing rows upon rows of needle-like teeth. It lunged.